All right, let's get going.
All right, let's go.
Yeah, Graham, I'm starting. So, we up everything on the video? We live on the video?
Good morning, Albany.
Albany there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear us?
Can hear you. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, and Renee, and who else is up there?
Megan Anderson.
Oh, okay. Good morning, Megan.
Morning.
Hi, we have a very busy agenda this morning, so everyone's back for the summer. Lots of projects between now and the end of the year, so good to have everybody back. Today is the 13th anniversary of September 11th, so at 8:46 we'll take a moment of silence, and so Joe, if you can just flag us on that, because the thoughts and prayers are still with those families, victims of that horrible tragedy. So at 8:46 we will stop. Jason, why don't you start getting us open here on the meeting?
Sure. Now I'm going to, I note that Renee Noacky and Megan Anderson are participating in the meeting via video conference
Post-Labor Day?
from the New York State Division of Budget Conference Center at the Capitol Building, room 131 in Albany. I will now ask for motions and seconds to call to order the September 11, 2014 meetings of the New York State Housing Finance Agency, the New York State Affordable Housing Corporation, State of New York Mortgage Agency, State of New York Municipal Bond Bank Agency, and the Tobacco Settlement Financing Corporation. May I have a motion for HFA and AHC?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second.
We have a second to open the meeting?
Second, HFA.
Good.
A motion and a second for Sunny May.
Motion. Second, I'll be second.
Motions for MBBA and TSFC and a second.
So moved.
Second.
As items are presented to each board throughout today's meetings, these motions and seconds will be used unless specific items call for a different vote or unless any board member or director wishes to record his or her vote differently.
Now turn things over to Daryl for the President's report.
Thank you very much. Good morning and welcome back. I hope everyone had an enjoyable summer and is ready to race into the fourth quarter. As you all know, the last 3 months of the year are often our most fruitful. This year will be no exception. As today's agenda indicates, we can expect a record year of affordable housing production on the state level. And I'm pleased that we've been able to implement Governor Cuomo's mandate laid out in his House New York program. I'm confident that we will continue to provide affordable housing for all New Yorkers in the years to come. With that said, here at the agencies earlier this morning, the MIC approved insurance for 8 projects representing 844 units of affordable housing located in New York City, Sullivan, Westchester, and Nassau counties. On the multifamily side today, HFA will be seeking your approval for 8 projects totaling nearly $500 million in financing. You'll also be briefed on a new volume cap recycling mechanism that will allow us to capture and recycle volume cap in a more efficient way. You'll also be asked to approve the appointment of a new senior officer, Ted Houghton, which you'll hear more about in the next few minutes. Administrative items, you will be updated on agency investments, procurement, and bond sales via our quarterly reports. And today at AHC, you'll review awards being sought totaling just over $7 million. These awards represent 200 units within New York City, 145 units outside of New York City, including the counties of Monroe, Erie, Broome, Wayne, and Onondaga, and Orleans. As you guys know, this summer has been hit with the craze of the ALC Ice Bucket Challenge, and the challenge was brought to Marion Zucker, who asked colleagues to join her. So I, as well as Mike Friedman, joined Marion in the Ice Bucket Challenge, and we challenged our contemporaries in the city housing business. So Gary Rodney at HBC, Shola Olatoye at NYCHA, and Vicky Bean at HPD. And I'm pleased to report that they picked up the challenge and they also participated in the ALS challenge. So it was great to have that camaraderie between the state and the city, and even greater that resources were raised and applied towards ALS. So although our main business is housing, we also get caught up in the pop genre also. Just kind of letting you know we're cool. So,
Literally and figuratively.
yeah, yes.
Very good.
So with that, we turn it back to you,
Was the water cold?
Mr. Chair.
It was-
Very,
there were-
very.
We raised $1,000.
And I think likewise was done in the city.
Good, terrific,
Yeah.
good. Jason, we have a whole host of committee actions that you can report on.
Yes. The Mortgage Insurance Committee took the following actions earlier today. The committee adopted minutes of the July 10, 2014 meeting, approved 100% mortgage insurance for LaPorte Apartments, Mount Vernon, Westchester County, approved 100% mortgage insurance for Stye Park Apartments, 77 New York Avenue, Brooklyn, Kings County, approved 100% mortgage insurance for Hudson Art House Lofts, 621 River Street, Troy, Rensselaer County. Approved 50% mortgage insurance for Sam Burt Houses, 2675 West 36th Street, Brooklyn, Kings County. Approved 100% mortgage insurance for Locust Manor Family Residence 2, 172nd Street and Bailey Boulevard in Jamaica, Queens County. Approved 100% mortgage insurance for Brook Point, 94 158 Gibson Boulevard, Valley Stream, Nassau County, and approved 100% mortgage insurance for Golden Ridge, Rock Ridge Drive, and Route 42, Town of Thompson in Sullivan County. As to the audit committees for all 5 agencies, on Tuesday, September 9th, the audit committees met and took the following actions. All 5 committees adopted minutes. All 5 agencies adopted a resolution recommending the approval of administrative budget requests and financial plans for fiscal year 2015. All 5 agencies received a presentation from the independent auditor, Ernst & Young. HFA, Sunny Mae, MBBA, and TSFC reviewed financial statement update for the second and third quarters for fiscal year 2014 and the first quarter fiscal 2015 for AHC. All 5 agencies reviewed a report of administrative budget expenditures for the 9 months ending July 31, 2014, and updated financial plans. As for the governance committees for all 5 agencies, on Tuesday, September 9th, the governance committees met and took the following actions. All 5 committees adopted minutes. All 5 agencies approved a contract with E.G. Bowman for insurance broker services and approval and/or review of various contracts monitored by the Facilities and Administration Department. HFA, Sunny Mae, MBBA, and TSFC approved contracts for financial services dealing with arbitrage rebate calculations. HFA, Sunny Mae, MBBA, and TSFC approved a contract with SS&C Technologies for the provision of a license for cash flow analysis services and review of the financial printing services contracts with ImageMaster LLC. HFA and Sunny Mae approved a contract with Gardner Inc. for information technology consultant services. HFA and Sunny Mae approved a financial service reporting services contract with Bloomberg LLP and approved the Sunny Mae custody services agreement with the Bank of New York Mellon. HFA approved the extension of the insurance consultant contract with Insurance Advisors LLC and reviewed the insurance consultant contract with Sullivan Hernandez Agency Inc., a MWBE. HFA approved the agency's contracts with Pathstone Corporation, In-House Corporation, Long Island Housing Partnership, and reviewed the McCormick Consulting Services, Inc. contract for technical assistance consultant services with respect to the agency's Manufactured Home Cooperative Fund program. Sunny Mae approved the extension of the contract with Iron Mountain Intellectual Property Management, Inc., and reviewed the contracts with Overture Technologies, formerly CompuGain, and Xerox Mortgage Services. Sunny Mae approved the agency's master servicer agreement with M&T Bank. MBBA and TSFC reviewed annual contracts with the agency's independent auditor, Ernst & Young LLP. HFA reviewed a legal services contract with Denton's US LLP as counsel to HFA in its role as lender on the acquired 44 project Mitchell Lama loan portfolio. HFA, Sunny May, MBBA, and TSFC were given a presentation on the agency's policies relating to independent registered municipal advisors and the SEC MDC initiative. And HFA, Sunny May, MBBA, and TSFC were given a follow-up discussion of MWBE participation.
As you can tell, there's a lot of activity that happens outside of this regular monthly board meeting, and the committees continue to do a lot of the work, and our continued thanks to the board members for putting that time and effort into making all these actions happen. So thank you, as always. We will now present items shared by HFA, AHC, Sony May, MBA, and TSFC. Jason will record the approval of the minutes.
The minutes of the meetings of HFA and Sunny May held on July 10, 2014, AHC held on June 12, 2014, and MBBA and TSFC held on April 10, 2014, shall be deemed approved absent corrections from the members and directors. And I would like to note also that Linda Baldwin has joined the meeting via video conference from Albany for MBBA and TSFC. Good morning, Linda.
Thank you, good morning.
Hi, Linda.
Apologize for the late entry.
No problem.
No problem.
Now move to the shared action items. Item number 2 in your material is a resolution approving the appointment of a senior officer. Darrell, why don't you give that to the board?
Great, thank you very much. And as I mentioned before, Ted Houghton, we have a proposal in front of you for the approval of Ted coming over to become our executive deputy. Here it says senior vice president. It's a position that has been vacant for a while, formerly held by acting or interim executive deputy Mike Scrabutanis. But Ted Houghton comes to us with a tremendous experience in housing, most immediately as the executive director of the Supportive Housing Network for New York. Although before that, Ted has certainly been an advocate in regard to housing, especially those with special needs. Very well written, very respected, and is a tremendous asset for us here at the agencies. Currently a Brooklyn guy, which is always a good thing, but he's originally a Californian who is now a transplanted New Yorker, originally coming to New York for college. I believe has 2 degrees from Columbia, and has hit the ground running. And we're excited about this addition. Not only his understanding and knowledge of housing, but also he's very well written, and there are some opportunities as the mayor and the governor continue to put focus on affordable housing. I think there's some updates in regard to policies and just the way that we need to keep up with the challenges that face the affordable housing arena. So again, we're excited about having Ted join us, and wholeheartedly recommend your passage for him to join us here.
Good. Welcome, Ted. Good to see you. English literature and an MFA also. So very creative. Hopefully we can use those
Couple detours.
services as well. Is it time, Joe? Or no?
Just about 2 minutes.
Oh, what about 2 minutes? My clock's fast.
So Ted, you just want to say hello or anything?
Yeah, I'm very excited to be here and to start next week. In my former position, I worked with many, many different government agencies, probably I think 17, we tried to count them once. And under the leadership of Commissioner Towns and many good people that work at HCR, it's one of the best, if not the best run agencies that I've encountered and worked with. And with Marion Zucker and very many other very talented people here, it's really exciting to become part of that team. So really happy to be here. I'm looking forward to working with all of you.
That's great. Great. Yeah, Ted will hopefully coordinate a lot of our activities. So around, not only with internally here, but with other agencies around the state government. So I think he can play a very valuable role in making sure that we're unified in our housing approach and policy across the state, not just here. So, you know, it's 8:46 now, so as I said at the beginning of the meeting, why don't we just take a moment of silence in remembrance of the time when the plane hit the first tower 13 years ago, so. All right, thank you for that. So the next item on our agenda is item number 3, which
Oh, wait,
is.
excuse me, we'll go to a vote for.
Oh, we have to vote for Ted? Sorry, Ted.
You don't get that paycheck without the vote.
Wow.
Took the bases, we round third.
All right, now before all 5 boards is a resolution appointing Ted Houghton as Senior Vice President to the agencies. Assuming the first and second previously entered for all 5 agencies, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motions are carried and the resolution adopted. Congratulations, Ted, and welcome.
Good. Yes, enjoy your next couple of days. Monday we'll start. And you will be very busy, so. Now we can move to item number 3. So sorry for jumping the gun there, Ted. This is a resolution approving administrative budgeting request and financial plans for fiscal year 2014. I'd just like to, Sheila, you come up and make a couple of comments.
Yes. Morning. Bringing my deputy Darrell Johnson and Gary Weinstock, the controller, up here also.
The 18.
We're requesting the approval of 3 items by the board. Approval of the agency's fiscal year 2015 administrative budget, not to exceed $56.8 million.
Excuse me, if that's a microphone, we're competing with an air conditioner.
Sorry.
Thank
Usually I'm loud, so I modulate myself. Not to exceed $56.8 million for the operating expenses of the 5 agencies. Approval of each agency's financial plan, which shows 2015 and 3 additional forecasted years of revenues and expenses for each agency, and approval of the cash program budgets for HFA and MBBA, which shows sufficiency of funds for debt service payments on the bonds. The revenue sources for the administrative budget consist of $32.8 million or 58% from HFA, $21.3 million or 37% from Sunny Mae, and less than 5% from MBBA, TSFC, and AHC combined. The $56.8 million budget is an increase of $1.1 million over last year's budget, or 1.98%, keeping the increase below the 2% level. The increase includes an increase for IT maintenance costs and acquisitions to replace aging equipment, and also increases in personal services for our anticipated new hires and increased benefit costs. Staffing has increased from last year's level of 174 to 192 currently, and that's thanks to Sharon's efforts there. And we have 10 hires in the approval process queue. Discretionary spending continues to be less than 7% of the budget and remains essentially the same as last year. As for the financial plans, after last year's discussions regarding showing deficits in the 4 projected years, staff reached out to the controller's office to see if we could use accumulated funds available to cover out-year expenses. This change was agreed to by their office, and we're able to show in 4 out of the 5 agencies which had some accumulated funds, no deficits exist in the next 4 years. AHC is the exception there, which still shows some deficits. For the preliminary cash program budgets, which are required only for HFA and MBBA, these show sufficient funds available to pay debt service, and finals will be provided with the year-end financials in January. I just want to thank my staff for all their help, and thank you for your consideration.
Any thoughts, comments on that? I mean, it's nice to see there's growth, but it's under 2%. And maybe Sheila or Darrell, some perspectives for the board on the sense of personnel, because we've, for a long time, seemingly have had to do a lot more with less. We're
Yes.
getting more staff. We seem like we'll get a little bit more, but just put that in perspective as to where the staff number is now as opposed to where it's been in the recent past.
It probably 3 or 4 years ago, we were above the 200 level. And then it dropped down each year after that, and we were at 174, and probably lower, 172 at one point. Now we're up to 192. We're able to budget for the full complement of 221, because we do expect to do some additional hires. We are growing. The demands on the agency are increasing, so the increased staff is really needed and justified. So I think we feel better now. We can sort of breathe a little bit better with the 192. It's a much better complement of staffing.
I have a question.
Sure.
You did a fabulous job with 174, so why are we going to 221?
Well, I think that there are more and more projects coming to the agency. They're more complicated and more complex, and really require additional staffing. We don't know if we will get to that 221, if we'll need it, but we'd like to be prepared in case.
Okay, thank you.
A number of programs have expanded, but certainly before that, it did not take in consideration the Governor's House in New York, which is a $1 billion commitment. So
Right.
it's a lot of work out there.
And we also took over the Mitchell-Lama program.
That's my word. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would concur with, at least since I've been here as chairman, I've noticed the workload has increased dramatically, and we've taken on a lot of other responsibilities that were spread across other parts of the state government, and rightfully so, because we're the housing agency, so Mitchell-Lama just being one of them.
Yes.
And there's a lot more to come, and the affordable housing arena, as you can just tell from reading the papers now, is even more a daily item than it's ever been.
Yes.
Yeah, so, but that's what.
First of all, this is very impressive at a time where we're increasing the workload and the complexity and the footprint of the agency. To keep this under 2% is great. One question, it appears that if you look at 14 to 15, one of our biggest areas of savings, and this may just be budget versus actuals, is under pension fund payments. And I'm wondering if you could just say a word or two more at a time when I think a lot of public agencies are perhaps moving in the other direction. I'm just
Sure.
wondering sort of how it is that we're able to save as much as we appear to be in that area.
That is a number provided to us by the state.
Okay.
And I believe because they are having a good year in terms of earnings and investment proceeds, they're able to pass along the savings to us. Yes.
I noticed that one of the areas where there's a substantial increases in capital expenditures, and that's solely for IT and related IT.
Yes. Our system is old and aging, and it really
I think we
needs.
can all attest to that.
Yes, and we are using a consultant to sort of evaluate our ongoing needs, but in the interim, we've got to update some of the hardware that we have, so.
But staff will not be getting iPhone 6s and.
Well, we are looking at.
iWatches and.
Not iWatches, but we are looking at replacing BlackBerries, so.
With iPhone, with the different
With
technology.
the different, product because it is not keeping up with the security needs that we have.
Good, and any other thoughts, comments? Jason?
Now before all 5 agencies is a resolution adopting an administrative budget for fiscal year November 1, 2014 to October 31, 2015, and financial plans for fiscal years 2015, 16, 17, and 18 for HFA, Sunny May, MBBA, TSFC, and for AHC financial plans for fiscal years 2016, 17, 18, and 19, and preliminary cash budgets for HFA and MBBA for fiscal year 2015. Assuming the first and second previously entered for all 5 agencies, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The
motions are carried and the resolution adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Jason,
guys.
Bill, if you would, I'd like to add an addendum to my report. Over the summer, we were notified by a long-serving board member, Naomi Byer, that she would be stepping down from the board in order to put some focus onto some personal issues. And I just wanted to reflect that in the meetings, that appreciate her time of service, and at some point in the near future, we will ask her to come and give her a token for her time on the board. But I just wanted to make sure that was read into the minutes, and also to notify any board members who were not aware that she had stepped down over the summer.
Nice lady.
Yes. Yeah, I'd echo Daryl's comments, because she was a terrific board member and always added value and was deeply concerned about the mission of the agency, so we wish her well. We should thank her for the service. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item is item number 4, which is a consent item, so there's no discussion unless you so desire, but it's the approval of the quarterly bond sale reports for the periods ending April 30th and July 31st of 2014. It's always a good report. There's a lot of good information in there about what we do in the marketplace, and so I recommend you take a good look at it. Unless any other discussion, we can move forward, Jason.
Now before the HFA and Sunny May boards is a resolution approving the agency's bond sale reports. Assuming the first and second previously entered for HFA and Sunny May, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motions are carried and the resolution adopted.
The next 4 items are information items, so typically there's no discussion on those items unless the board members request. So I will read through the items, and just most of them are just our usual reports that come to the board on a periodic basis. Item number 5 is a review of the agency's quarterly procurement report for the period ending July 31st. I would like to make one quick comment on that procurement report. If you noticed, is the MWBE performance, which was discussed at the governance committee, we're up over 30% for the second quarter, so there's clearly a lot of activity happening with our MWBE efforts, and so that's a good sign. Item number 6 is a review of the third quarterly investment reports for the periods ending July 31st for HFA, Sony May, MBBTA, TSFC, and the first quarterly report for the period ending June 30th for AHC. Item number 7 is a financial statement update for the second and third quarters of fiscal 2014. And item number 8 is a report of administrative budget expenditures for the periods ending April 30th and July 31st, and updated financial plans. And again, these are our usual submission of reports. So, Jason, at this point, could you call to order the Finance Committee meeting of HFA, Sony May, MBBA, TSFC, and to be held jointly with HFA, Sony May, MBBA, and TSFC board meetings?
Yes, I will now ask for motions and seconds to call to order the September 11, 2014 Finance Committee meetings of the New York State Housing Finance Agency, the State of New York Mortgage Agency, State of New York Municipal Bond Bank Agency, and the Tobacco Settlement Financing Corporation. May I have a motion and a second for HFA?
So moved.
Second.
Motion for Sunny May and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Motions for MBBA and TSFC and a second.
So moved.
Second.
As items are presented to each committee throughout today's meetings, these motions and seconds will be used unless specific items call for a different vote or unless any committee member or director wishes to record his or her vote differently. I'll move to item 1, the minutes of the Sunny May, MBVA, and TSFC committee meetings held on January 29, 2014, and HFA held on July 10, 2014 shall be deemed approved, absent corrections from members and directors.
The next item on the HFA, Sony May, MBBA, and TSFC Finance Committee is an information item and is listed as item number 2 on the TSFC and MBBA Finance Committee agenda and item number 3 on the HFA and Sony May Finance Committee agenda. Not like this is not complicated enough, Jeff. People always put together and then we get different items. But Marion, you have a presentation on the agency's policies.
I do, and everybody in governance and audit heard this already, so
Okay.
I will be brief. For those of you who weren't with us on Tuesday, and if I can pass these to you, Bill, and ask you to pass them around. We wanted to brief the board because there have been, as a result of Dodd-Frank, some significant changes in the way that agency does business and interacts with the investment banking community. The first new rule change to go into effect is something that we call the Muni Advisor Rule, and requires that firms that provide advice to the agency need to prioritize the agency's best interests. There we go. Best interest above theirs. And so there's assumption that that's not necessarily the case with investment banking firms. And so in order for the agency to engage in dialogue with investment banking firms and get advice perhaps on refunding opportunities or new programs that we ought to consider, the agency needs to have an exemption for that dialogue to happen. There's 3 possible exemptions, which I've listed on page 3 of the report. Either we have a registered municipal advisor sort of standing on the sidelines waiting to give us advice. We have an RFP on the street and have asked for particular specific advice, or somebody's already been hired to be an underwriter for an agency issue. We felt that in order to maintain sort of the open dialogue that we've always enjoyed with Wall Street, that we would appoint independent registered municipal advisors for each of the issuing entities. So we sent out an email, the first page of which is highlighted page 4, to tell the investment banking community we've hired 3 advisors for HFA. We've hired, I always get their name mixed up, excuse me. It's Tom Kane and his firm.
What's the name of the firm?
I always need somebody to tell, I always think of it as Tom Kane.
Kane Mitter.
Kane Mitter, sorry. For Sunny May, it's CSG. And both the appointments at HFA and Sunny May are 2 firms that do a lot of business in the housing sector. Both Tom Kane and the folks at CSG have decades of experience in that sector, and they're people that we do rely on time to time. I do want to make sure that everybody knows, even though they're appointed as our IRMAs for those 2 issuers, as we do single issues and want to bring in a financial advisor to the table, we're not precluded from using anybody else on our panel, and that's clearly our intention. It's just that we needed to have 2 people sort of at the standby should we want to pursue an idea brought to us by an investment banker. And for TSFC and MBBA, we've appointed CRAG, Public Resources Advisory Group, a very, very experienced general market FA firm, does a lot of business with the state, and was the advisor for us on our most recent tobacco deal. I'm gonna stop there for a second, see if there's any questions about MA. I think there was some presumption in Dodd-Frank that community issuers needed a babysitter, advisor. There's no exemption for sophisticated issuers. There has been a lot of conversation about that, but it doesn't look like that's likely to happen. So this, I think, will be the protocol for the foreseeable future.
Hey, Mary, in your first bullet point, you say that these advisors have a fiduciary duty to the client. What is that? What's that?
It
refer to?
means that they need to put our interests above theirs.
Theoretically, they are doing already. We
For
just-
the ERMIS, with the investment bankers, there is always that disclosure about really whose interests are they.
Right, but this part doesn't affect the investment bankers we're working with, does it? These are just the advisors we've now.
These
brought
are
on.
the advisors, exactly, and that's exactly right. And to take advice, there needs to be that fiduciary responsibility, so that's why we have an MA at the table with us to listen to what an investment banker has to say, to make sure our interests are protected.
Yeah, so basically their interests are aligned with ours.
The
at all
ERMIS,
times.
yes. The other change, or not change, just new initiative that we wanted to bring to the board's attention is what we call MCDC, which we have outlined on page 5. And MCDC was launched by the SEC in March of this year, making sure that issuers are continuing to comply with their continuing disclosure responsibilities, something that we take very seriously at the agency. And I know you've had a presentation from Alex in the past about the protocols we've set up to make sure that any change to the information that's out there on the agency is updated on a regular basis. And we do an internal email on a weekly basis, just checking the facts that we're required to report on. MCDC set up a situation where investment bankers had to go back and check that everything that they had been involved with was complied with, and it set up a bit of an adversarial situation between investment bankers and the agency. We went back and did our own due diligence, scrubbed all of our official statements, continuing disclosure agreements. We found that we were in compliance in all material respects, and I want to stop for a second. Give a shout out to Alex, Helen Pennock, Gloria Boyd, who worked hard on that effort. And also on the MA, I've neglected to mention, not just those people worked with us on it, but also Sheila and her team. Anyway, so we found that we had been in material compliance. We've also been touching base with all the underwriters that have participated in our financing, and so far from everybody we've spoken to, there's a clean bill of health, and there's no expectation that they'll report a material event to the SEC. Any questions on that?
In terms of your comment about the sophisticated, no exemption for sophisticated agencies, I mean, this seems to
On
me.
the MA, yeah.
So,
On the MA rule.
yeah, I mean, it seems that, you refer to it as babysitting, it seems a little unnecessary for us. Is there a way to get an exemption?
I don't think the SEC is going to consider it. I think that there's been a number of people who have talked about it publicly in the industry, and I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
Because I volunteered to take like the MSRB tests again, and that in and of itself won't do it. So it's industry-wide. The other thing about MCDC that I want to mention on MBBA and TSFC, actually on TSFC, to the extent that the state's otherwise involved in any transactions that we have out there, Division of Budget has also done a scrub of their disclosure, and I believe has come to the same conclusion that there's not been material event that we failed to report.
Any other thoughts, comments from Marion on this item?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Marion. There being no further items for MBBA and TSFC, I'm going to ask for a motion and a second to adjourn both of those meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Assuming the first and second previously entered for the MBBA and TSFC Finance Committees, all in favor of adjourning the MBBA and TSFC Finance Committee meetings, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The committee motions are carried and committee meetings are adjourned. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the MBBA and TSFC boards, all in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motions are carried and the MBBA and TSFC meetings are adjourned. And our next board meetings for MBBA and TSFC are scheduled for Thursday, December 11th at 8:30 a.m.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Andy, thanks.
See you, Darryl.
Did you get that time stuff?
Okay, we now move to the Sony May action items. The next two items on the agenda were just discussed this morning and voted on earlier this morning at the Mortgage Insurance Committee meeting. So these items are now up for a vote by the Sony May board. There will be no discussion on these items unless any director so requests. So we will now move to a vote on these items. Item number 9 in our package is a resolution approving 100% mortgage insurance on a $15.65 million HFA permanent first mortgage loan for LaPorte Apartments on Bramerton Avenue in Mount Vernon in Westchester County.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
Have a good day.
So moved.
Now before the board for approval is a resolution of the State of New York Mortgage Agency approving mortgage insurance and a commitment for the provision thereof for LaPorte Apartments, 203 Gramerton Avenue, Mount Vernon in Westchester County. Assuming the first and second previously entered for Sunny May, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motions are carried and the resolution adopted.
Next move to item 11, which is a resolution approving 100% mortgage insurance on a $7.95 million HFA mortgage loan for Stuyt Park Apartments on New York Avenue in Brooklyn. Jason?
Now before the board is a resolution of the State of New York Mortgage Agency approving mortgage insurance and a commitment for the provision thereof for Stuyt Park Apartments, 27 New York Avenue, Brooklyn in Kings County. Assuming the first and second previously entered for Sunny May, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Good. The next item we will discuss, it's a resolution, it's item number 12, resolution authorizing the release of $6.75 million from the Project Pool Insurance account to the Housing Trust Fund. So, Lauren, could you just give the board a little more background on that?
Yes, the approval for this transfer this is a transfer according to the budget bill. The 6.750 will be the second transfer approved. This is going to the Housing Trust Fund. In May, the board approved an aggregate of 3 transfers in the amount of $32,418,000. And we anticipate that there will be additional transfers requested before the end of the year, possibly as early as next month, for approximately $34 million in transfers.
So the total for the year then is?
The total for the year is $75,418,000.
Any thoughts, questions? Okay. Thank you. Jason?
Now before the Sunny May Board is a resolution authorizing the transfer of excess reserves from the Project Pool Insurance account of the Mortgage Insurance Fund. Assuming the first and second previously entered for Sunny May, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
The next item, item number 13, is an adoption of a resolution to authorize the issuance of bonds. Mary, could you just give us a little more background on that?
Absolutely. It's been our custom for Sunny May to come to the board and ask for broad authority to issue bonds, both to fund the origination of new mortgage loans and to take the opportunity when we see it to refund existing outstanding debt at higher coupons with lower coupon debt. So we're before the board this morning asking for the authority to issue up to $558 million and change of bonds. This is something that we expect will carry us forward for approximately a year, which has been our custom to ask the board for what we see as our production and refunding opportunities on a going forward basis. And this gives us the ability to be flexible and nimble about coming to the market when we see an opportunity to take advantage of, instead of having to wait for a board review and approval cycle. And we have come back to the board after we've been in the market and reported on what we've done. The 558 is a mixture of 200 million of new money, which will be used to originate new mortgage loans, and 358 million of what we see as refunding opportunities. Part of that also is to take an existing series of bonds that's currently in a variable rate basis and to refund that and take it long and reduce the agency's variable rate exposure. Are there any questions?
So we've done this before in the past. Again, it just
Yes.
gives you the opportunity, if there's a refunding opportunity, to move quicker, so we don't have to miss an opportunity. So,
Exactly.
good. All right, any other questions for Marion?
Thank you very much.
Great.
Now before the Sunny May Committee and Board are resolutions to be adopted that were transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the Sunny May Finance and Program Committee, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the Sunny May Board, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution is adopted.
Hey, our last item on the agenda is an information item. It's item number 14 in your package, review of third quarter reports on the financial status of existing hedges, excuse me. This is required by the SWAP guidelines, and it's just our usual reporting on this. No discussion on this item unless the director so requests. Hearing no. There being no further items for Sunny May Finance and Program Committee, I'm going to ask for a motion and a second to adjourn the HFA Finance and Program.
Sunny May.
Sunny May, did I say it?
So moved, sir.
Sorry, you said it was incorrect. Designation.
Oh, okay, sorry, so adjourn the Program Committee meeting, so.
Motion and a second?
Done.
Okay.
Sure.
And can we have a motion and a second to adjourn the Sunny May Board meeting?
You got it.
Okay. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the Sunny May Finance and Program Committee, all in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. The motions are carried and the committee meeting is adjourned. One more, Tony.
Yeah, go on, Tony.
Assuming the first and second, assuming the first and second previously entered for the Sunny May Board, all in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye. Moses, one last vote, if you can just say aye, to adjourn the Sunny May Board meeting.
You want to say aye?
Say aye. There you go.
Otherwise
Thank
you
you,
have to
Tony,
say-
and you too. Okay. Great,
In your hat, what's your hurry?
the Sunny May meetings are adjourned, and the next board meeting is scheduled for Thursday, October 9, 2014, at 8:30 a.m.
Good. Those guys must be busy today. Marge, thank you, as always. Travel safe back. I hope it's quicker on the way home. All right, now we move to HFA action items. Item number 15 is a resolution authorizing financing approval in amount not to exceed $14 million for Sky Park Apartments on New York Avenue in Kings County. We discussed this at some point this morning at the MIC, and Marion, could you just give us a little bit
I'm
more
gonna
color?
just give a big picture and hand it over to Brett. I would say here it comes. So for the next several board meetings, you will see considerable amount of projects coming your way. A mix of both new construction and preservation affordable deals, which will typically fund in the open resolution. And we're also starting to move forward the new crop of 80/20s. One of which is on the agenda today. The other thing I do want to give folks a heads up about, we have been in discussions with a financial institution about a new financing structure, which we intend to bring to the board at the next board meeting. I'm happy to do any briefings ahead of time if anybody would find that helpful. We'll do that. Okay. We think it's a way of helping financial institutions meet their CRA requirements, and it will help us lower at least the borrowing cost during the construction period. So stay tuned for that. And that's why there's an item in this board meeting that we're pulling, and we're going to bring back to next month's board meeting.
Is there anything you can share that we can read on our own to get prepared and then seek out questions, or how do you want to handle the?
Maybe what I'll do is to put together a draft memo and start to, and get that to you guys sooner than later. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, good morning. The first item before you is authorizing financing for Sky Park Apartments, which is in Brooklyn. It's the acquisition and rehabilitation of an 11-story, 103-unit property located in Crown Heights neighborhood of Brooklyn. 86 of the units will be set aside for households earning under 60% of the area median income, but more importantly, 101 of the units are participating, getting project-based vouchers through the RAD program. This is a Mitchell-Lama 236 program, preservation program. It's not at one of the ESD Mitchell-Lamas, just to be clear, but it is still part of our efforts to preserve the Mitchell-Lama portfolio. We are asking for authorization to issue $14 million of a maximum amount of bonds, as well as $698,000 annual allocation of as-of-right low-income housing tax credits. In terms of the development team, this is a CB Manual is the developer, and tax credits will be purchased by Enterprise. Chase is providing the letter of credit, and Sunny Mae, as you know, is doing the insurance during the permanent period. I don't know if I mentioned that the total investment here is $26.6 million. Some little bit of context in terms of the site. We kind of consider this a transit-oriented development. It lies very close to the Brooklyn Museum, the Botanical Gardens, Prospect Park, but it's very well served by mass transit, and as a senior project, that's obviously important. Also, the Long Island Railroad is just a couple blocks away. This is a related party transaction. It has always been owned by Sky Park Housing. It was originally constructed in 1973. There's a substantial scope of work here, about $65,000 per unit, including the conversion of the electric heating system to gas, replacement of all the plumbing fixtures, bathrooms, kitchens, and the like. A little bit about the acquisition. The acquisition is $11 million. It'll include the repayment of the HFA bonds outstanding from the original construction of the property of $1.3 million, and the repayment of an $875,000 HFA subsidy loan that was provided a few years back. The remaining acquisition price is made up of the seller's note. Any questions? Yes.
Terrific project. What's the relocation plan, or is the rehab going to happen?
I imagine that it's rehab in place. It's very common on a property like this, but I'll turn to my underwriter to verify that. Richard? It's rehab in place, right?
It's a shared relocation plan on the file. There are
So you're going to move folks around within the building? Okay.
Yeah, often a lot of the work is done with them actually in place during the day too. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of that occurs. Any other questions?
Okay, we'll go ahead to the vote. Now before the committee and board are resolutions to be adopted that were transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the committee, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the HFA board, All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Item number 16 was also discussed this morning at the MIC meeting. It's a resolution authorizing financing approval in amount not to exceed $11 million for Hudson Art House Lofts on River Street in Troy, Rensselaer County. So,
Okay, first, a little bit of context, and Troy actually had the opportunity to go and visit this site and with the mayor. There's a lot going on in this area. There's a lot downtown in Troy. This is a little bit down the road, I guess is the right way, or down the river, actually, from downtown. But this project is part of a number of investments that are just occurring. Across the street, there is the regional food program that is developing a building that is serving for that entire area, but they're going to provide fresh produce at the site. Adjacent to this site is another long vacant historic building that is being seriously looked at for financing through our agency as well for another affordable project through the UFA program. And actually, the owners of this building that are moving forward are working to move forward on another building on this stretch. Again, a historic building, and in that building, they're looking to do hopefully a more mixed income or market rate project. And there's a kind of a transportation hub that's being developed along this street. It's interesting. You go there now, and there's like lots of vacancy, but all these things are really starting to happen, and this is kind of hopefully part of that first wave. So this project itself includes the acquisition and rehabilitation of a 5-story historic building. It's going to be a mixed income project with 10% of these units set aside for households earning up to 90% of AMI. It's targeted for the use of artists. We are looking for a allocation of up to $11 million of fixed-rate tax-exempt bonds, $544,000 annual allocation of tax credits. Just to note, the project's also receiving state low-income housing credits as well for that for that middle-income portion of the project. It's being undertaken by the Facino Group, which is out of Missouri. We haven't done work with them before, but they established a relationship with Mount Vernon through an RFP process on that other building, and they're actually partnering with a management company whose name escapes me at the moment, ARCO, that we have done quite a bit of work with. What's that?
Mount Vernon.
Did I say Mount Vernon? I'm sorry. I meant Troy. I am on the right page this time, but we'll get to Mount Vernon in a couple projects. So anyway, Chase is providing the letter of credit. First Sterling is purchasing the tax credits, and Sunny Mae is providing the mortgage insurance. It's going to create 31 bedroom, 45 2-bedroom, and 5 3-bedroom units. It's again along this waterfront district. It's the Hudson River is right behind it, so there's quite some opportunities with the property. Total development cost is $19.2 million, and it's important to note, I think, that we're also leveraging the state and federal historic credit. I really appreciate it when projects are frankly leveraging that money, but also doing the historic renovations to those standards. Any questions?
Okay. Now before the committee and board are resolutions to be adopted that were transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the committee, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the HFA board, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution is adopted. Six, 16.
16. We just did 16.
Okay, did we?
We just did 16.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
M&M.
17, I'm sorry about that. Okay, yes, 17.
Is there a-
Oh, yes, and yes, I do note that Mr. Weiss is recusing himself from item 16.
Item number 17 is a resolution authorizing financing approval on amount not to exceed $10.23 million for Mickelson and Mills, 3 apartments, otherwise known as what, M&M?
M&M.
Located at 1832 Avenue D and 281 Mill Street in Rochester and Monroe County. Would you give us a little more?
Sure. Again, first I'll start with a little bit of context. I think this project is interesting in a number of ways. First of all, each of these, this is actually the aggregation of two individual projects that had sought 9% tax credits. As you may know, there's a large number of developers and affordable housing that occurs in Rochester, and it's hard to finance all those projects that are worthy through our UFA process, because those funds are very sought after. So these developers aggregated those two projects, and I'm actually kind of pleased, and this seems to be somewhat of a model we hope to move forward with, where we take a hard look at our 9% tax credit projects and collaborate with community agencies to see if they make sense or not as bond deals. So these two projects are very interesting community development projects. The Mills project is actually a third phase of the Mills at High Falls project. The first two phases were 9% tax credits, and it's the downtown historic district in Rochester. So it's adjacent to those first two phases, but it's also very near some substantial market rate housing redevelopment, all done in a historic way that was financed through ESD with the Restore New York program. The Mickelson building is also associated or adjacent to or right in the middle of two other HCR finance projects called the El Camino Phase 1 and Phase 2. It's in a neighborhood that was identified through the regional council as one of the governor's opportunity areas. So again, it has a lot of community development credibility. Together, they make a $19.2 million total development cost. The project's being undertaken by the Urban League in a partnership with Edgemere Development as a consultant. Chase is doing the letter of credit, and Sunny Mae the insurance. RBC is providing the tax credits. It involves the acquisition and conversion of two vacant historic buildings to create 59 units that will be affordable to households earning under 60% of the area median income. So we're asking for $10.2 million of permanent fixed rate bonds, $622,000 of low-income housing tax credit annual allocation, and a $900,000 HFA subsidy loan. Later today, we'll also be asking for Homes for Working Families funds through the HDFC board for $3.5 million. The leverage on this property is substantial. Again, it's it's participating in historic tax credit programs and will receive a total of $5.2 million of equity through the state and federal programs. And the city is actually making a substantial contribution, City of Rochester, of $1.85 million in home and other local funds. Again, it's the conversion of these two vacant historic buildings. And if you have any questions?
Another terrific project. My one question is about, and part of the rationale of this seems to be that it's in an opportunity area, it's close to schools. I'm curious, it has 20 of the units appear to be 2-bedroom, the rest are studios and 1-bedroom. Do we have any influence on the mix of units in a building like this to get more families in there? I mean, it seems like this is a project where it's, part of the pitch is that it's near playgrounds, and but it seems like a small fraction of the units.
Yeah, we certainly have some influence. We work closely with the developers. I think it's important to take these two projects separately, or the two parts of these projects. One is in a very much a downtown context, right? And it's adjacent to a lot of kind of similarity. The market, I think, is for the 1 and the 2 bedrooms. The other project actually is providing some units that don't exist. The first two phases of the project in the El Camino were all single-family detached projects or buildings. I think a total of 50, low 50s were built. But this will actually be introducing some units that don't quite exist in the neighborhood because we've built more than 50 single-family homes.
No other questions? Yep. Good project.
Okay, now before the committee and board are resolutions to be adopted that were transmitted in connection with this item. And I note that Mr. Weiss is recusing himself from this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the committee, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. Assuming the first and second previously entered for HFA, for the HFA board, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution is adopted.
Item number 18 is a resolution authorizing financing approval in amount not to exceed $407 million for 625 West 57th Street Apartments at 625 West 57th Street in Manhattan. Would you give us a little more on that one, Mary?
Sure. We're seeking approval this morning to issue up to $407 million of bonds to finance 625 West 57th Street, a new 709-unit building, 57th Street between 11th and 12th Avenue on the north side. 20% of the units, or 142 units, are going to be set aside for households earning under 15% of AMI. Also, in agreement with the developer, there's an additional smaller building that's being constructed on an adjacent side, and the low-income units in that building as well are going to be subject to the agency's regulatory agreement. There are 13 units, low-income units, in that particular building. The $407 million is comprised of $300 million of tax-exempt bonds and $107 million of taxable bonds. The bonds will be secured by a Bank of New York letter of credit. The total development cost for the project is $646 million, $407 million, as I said, of debt, the rest of equity. The developer for the project is the Durst organization. The Durst organization has considerable experience as both a commercial developer and residential developer in New York City. The agency has financed other 80/20s where Mr. Durst and his organization have been involved, and for those of you who've seen the B of A building, 6th Avenue, I think it's really one of their premier buildings and as green as anything
I think it's called the
ever
greenest
seen.
building
Ever.
in the country. Is that right? Yeah.
It's phenomenal. Royal Realty Corp., which is owned by the Durst's umbrella organization, will be the managing agent. They oversee the management of over 13 million square feet of office space and 2 million square feet of residential space. They're going to partner with Common Ground in this particular project for the lease-up of the low-income units. Hunter Roberts will be the GC on the transaction, and Slice Architects is the architect for this building. I meant to bring up a picture of what this will look like. This is a highly designed building. If anyone's familiar, it's called the Pyramid Building. So stay tuned. It will be interesting to see it. It's already under construction, coming out of the ground. And as such, it actually was a building, financing we had talked to the developer about last year. And we had asked them to hold off because we were in the process of financing another building for them at the time. And therefore, we have accommodated them with bonds in excess of what we're now allocating to new 80/20s. Because it was something that had been ready to go last year, and we asked them to wait. So we're financing it under our prior protocol.
You anticipated my question.
Are there any questions I haven't anticipated?
Yeah, a couple of questions. Well, first, what is the relationship of the second building to the first building in terms of why is it being done as a separate building, I guess, and then why is the first building contingent on the second building, I guess?
Well, I want to give you a bit of a history because when the project first came to the agency, it was to finance both buildings. And when we took a good hard look at it, if you consider the amount of equity that's going into the transaction, I think what we ultimately agreed with the development team is that that building itself could be fully funded with equity, and we would concentrate the debt on this building. But what was important to the agency was to subject those low-income units in that building to our regulatory agreement. The whole site is an inclusionary zoning site. The lawyer for the Durst organization, Gary Rosenberg, is here with us today, sporting a very snappy beard, and can also help answer other questions. But I think we all agreed that it was simpler and to concentrate the financing in one and still make sure that that other building provided the loan communities we were seeking. Looks like there's a file, Joyce.
Okay, but it still doesn't go back to the original question of why two buildings on this one site.
Oh, no, it's a square block. Just step up to the board, just get a little closer if you can. Sure. The entire site is a square block. There's already one building on it. This is a corner which had a pre-existing building on it, which we've demolished. So one is a rectangle site, which is the big building, and then there's a small corner building which we demolished and now we're replacing. So they wouldn't fit together, and there's also a required through block passage to separate.
Second question I have is the affordability, the length of the affordability.
It's permanent affordability.
It's permanent affordability because if it's only 35 years.
No, this is an inclusion.
35 years.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It is 35 years.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Because my reading of it was that it couldn't be permanent because there's a 99
Yes,
ground
yes,
lease.
because of the ground lease. I
But
apologize.
would there be anything that would preclude doing a 99-year affordability that runs concomitant with the ground lease?
Legally, should come up again. Just
No,
bring the chair with you if you want to. No, legally.
Do you want a computer to do some research?
The legal impediment on permanent was the 99-year
Right.
lease, okay? That we'd have to go back to the ground lessor because it's a restriction that we've already had. The ground lessor is 484 people.
Part of the ground lessor is also one of the entities that's affiliated with the Durst organization, isn't
No.
it? Durst is not related to the,
This is the estate of Thomas Appleby, which in 1850.
the Thomas Appleby.
The Thomas Appleby. So in 1850, he was granted the right to keep everything he filled in west of 10th Avenue. So we're dealing with his progeny, and so we have 3 different groups of owners having 480 people, and going back to them for anything is a production. So they've signed off on the last restrictive declaration, which we specifically included the requirement to build affordable housing in it. And getting them to agree to that was quite a bit. To go back to them again now and have them amend the restrictive declaration would be exceedingly difficult, exceedingly.
And so when you went to them with the,
We have a restrictive declaration which the city required us to include affordable housing, which was unique at that time. And we agreed to that we would build affordable housing. And we have a restrictive declaration that we would build the affordable housing and that for the length of the 35 years, it would be affordable housing. Getting them to agree that we could put that restriction on the site was a fair negotiation which had cost to it. To go back to them again and say, now we want to extend it to 99 years, anytime we ask them for something, it's rather costly, let's put it that way. If they're not required to give it to us, and they're not required to agree to further amendments, so that it would be very difficult to get them to agree to additional.
so the 35-year limit was actually a city requirement at the time?
Yeah, this was 2 years ago when we did, 3 years ago when we did the rezoning. It was quite a negotiation. And the city council wanted to know that we would be building affordable housing.
Right.
And they wanted to make sure we had it on the site.
And so we agreed to a restrictive declaration, which I think was the first time they've ever done it. Okay, in our case, where the city, and it was at the city council where it got imposed. So we have a restrictive deck that requires us to build affordable housing for the 35-year period, whenever we build the housing, which is now.
And the number of units was also included in that, or was it specified in that, or is that
Well, it
just
was the 80,
related
it
to
was
the
20,
80/20
it was
requirements?
80/20, because you didn't know exactly how many units it would be, but it's pretty much maxed out.
So the limits on affordability, or on the number of units and on the length of time which is required for affordability are, well, the length of time is unique to this site, the restriction on it, and the inability to, or the difficulty that would be involved in creating a long-term affordability.
Having paid already for an amendment for 35 years.
Right.
To go back to them now would be a very difficult discussion.
Right. I'm just curious because one of the things that has come up in the last several years, as you know, is the whole question of limiting the length of time of the affordability requirements. And the movement towards permanent affordability, or at least long-term affordability. And so I was just curious why in this project,
Because this was the first project where they required affordability. So once they require affordability, then they go to the next step of making it permanent. So we sort of got caught as the first of requiring it, you know.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I was just wanted clarification
And
as
it's
to
really,
why.
the net lease really limits our ability to freely negotiate any restrictions.
Right.
And Gary, the affordability restriction, I mean, it encumbers the fee interest, correct? I mean, even if hypothetically the ground
Yes.
lessee were to go away, the owner is still required to keep it
Exactly.
affordable for that
Exactly.
period of time.
Exactly, yes, yes. So that,
Okay.
that's why it's so difficult to deal with, you know, we did this in 1998, and you project just so many things in a ground lease at that time. And we actually had rezoned it then, but we had to change the zoning. When we had to go back and change the zoning, it was brutal to get them to agree. So, to go back to them would be.
It's fair enough.
Thank you.
Second question that I had in regard to this project was the EIS and the impact of the project on water and sewage facilities. Because my understanding is that the west side in particular is challenged in terms of the ability to process sewage. The water treatment facility is reaching, if not at its capacity, on the west side.
One of the things that we've always found, and I'm pretty sure we included part of that in this building, is the biggest problem is really stormwater management. We collect stormwater and reuse it as part of a gray water treatment plant.
Oh,
We
okay,
have
so
a-
this is similar to what you do in One Bryant Park?
Right, we have a gray water treatment plant in the Helena, which we substantially expanded, so that we are recycling a lot of the water and trying to collect the water. So that we also have, a very large part of this project is a permeable park in the center of it. So that we expect to be collecting a large part of our storm water into the project.
You want to describe some of the other green features that are particular to this building?
Well, as much as we could, wherever we could, we put in LED lighting which, well, first cost is more expensive since we're gonna own it forever. Well, for 96 years, 92 more years. We have less a concern about first cost than long-term cost, so LED lighting will substantially help. All of the fixtures, of course, are low water. All of the materials we look for is long-term sustainability, so that from our point of view, the maintenance of the building and what we have to do to maintain the building, okay, is of critical importance. So all of the fixtures will be the lowest electric use we can possibly have. We will have the most efficient air conditioning system, and I believe that, yeah, this building has a central air conditioning system so that it's much more efficient than individual units.
Yeah, and the central air conditioning system, is that, I don't know if it's possible because of the scale, but I know One Bryant Park has a very interesting,
That's underfloor air, which doesn't really work for residential.
yeah, for a residential building. It's also obviously a much larger building.
Right, but we did, I know we spent a fair amount of time working through not using PTAC units, which are not as efficient vis-a-vis building. So the building envelope has a curtain wall, which is much more efficient, much more expensive, but much more efficient. We think that for a residential building, a rental building, that this will be of a quality that, and set an environmental standard for it. The Helena, which was 10 years old now, set a standard then. We're taking all of that and moving it one step further. So everything that we had learned on the Helena on residential, and we built the Epic on 31st Street, we're now moving over to this. So we expect this to be as efficient as we can make it.
And is there any provision for energy generation, electricity generation on the site, or is?
We tried, we really need help from the Public Service Commission, okay? Con Ed makes it impossible. Just, I will
Yeah.
tell you, we are the biggest believers. We did it at One Bryant Park,
Right.
and we're looking at it at a future residential project to do distributed generation. Con Ed just makes it impossible. And so we were not able, we were looking at it, and in fact, what we wanted to do is take the Con Ed plant next door and
Demolish it.
well, the building is nice. We wanted
It was
to
a
take,
joke.
but we wanted to take the guts of it,
Right.
put it into below grade at our building, and free up that entire building.
Yeah.
Con Ed told us it's too efficient. that they wouldn't consider moving out. So we weren't able to do distributed generation in this
So
building.
there's no provision here for solar or for any other kind of?
Oh, no, not so.
Yeah. I would be interested in learning more, and I don't want to take
Okay.
up the board's time with this issue
happy
because
to.
it's a particular interest of mine of what was done and what can be done and what the problems that you ran into were.
I'd be love to
Excellent. Whoops.
have a conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
There is one more item I'd like to mention in connection with this project. It's not in your board materials, but it was brought to our attention recently that the Durst organization has been subject of an action by the U.S. Attorney's Office. The complaint really centers on the project, the Helena project, but it also kind of tries to rope in the 57th Street project. The complaint is basically alleging that the Durst buildings are not in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act in terms of building design and various features. And as it relates to this specific project, the U.S. Attorney is asking the court for an injunction against this project being designed and constructed in a manner that is in violation of the ADA.
And what's the timing on this?
Gary, you might be able to speak to that.
Sure. The dispute with the government is whether or not the New York City law, the 2008 code, complies with the federal law. We're building under the 2008 code, which every one of your buildings was built under. The federal government believes that you must comply with a safe harbor, which is a standard, an ANSI standard. If there are 300 items in the ANSI standard, the 2008 code complies with 292 of them. In other words, in New York City, they complied, the 2008 code was specifically amended the New York law, and let's remember, the New York law was the first ADA law. Before there was a Federal Fair Housing Act, there was the New York City law. So everybody in New York City built under the New York City law, not going to, because you could build under a local law that was intended to comply. The federal government has never reviewed the local law. So it says, we're not agreeing that the local law qualifies. So the issue with them is, and we're now, it's coming to the court now because we've been arguing with them for 5 years that, look, we build in accordance with New York City law. If the court says New York City law is illegal under the federal law, then we'll upgrade whatever we have to do. But we're not agreeing with your position that the New York City law, because it doesn't comply with.
So I'm sorry, but what's the timing? I mean,
The timing, I'm sorry. This is gonna go on for years. Right now, we have a motion pending, but it's gone on for 6 years. It'll go on another 2 or 3 years. But the effect on this project is probably $500,000 if we had to do everything they wanted to do.
And
it is not germane. We're fighting this because we believe our code's right and we shouldn't have to retrofit everything.
And are there other projects involved, or is it just these two?
Oh,
In the
it's
city?
every project in the city.
Okay.
Understand. Durst was the first one who said, we're not settling unless we resolve this issue, okay? The entire real estate board is behind this. There were probably 15 owners, 15 developers. All of the projects you've had for the last 20 years have the same issue. So this is the case that's actually going to decide whether or not, and it's not so much that it's so monumental, the cost, because the difference between the codes are not that much. It's just a question of principle that we're not going to take the New York City law and concede that it's wrong.
So Jason, we don't have any materials in our board packet on this. We don't really have any
It just
background. I'm not saying that it's difficult for me at least to evaluate the impact and context without any staff background on this. And I don't want to derail our overall timing. It's a terrific project, but I'm just wondering if there's anything we can do to get some more information on this.
So we received yesterday a copy of the complaint and the answer that Durst filed. I think that's all the information we have here.
You got to look at it
so far. I've taken a look at the complaint. I haven't, and I took a quick look at the answer.
But, so you'll know, the lenders on the project have a guarantee from a credit entity that it will be in compliance with the federal law. So they are comfortable that whatever is required, and we have $300 million of equity in this project. So that this issue is one that we appreciate, raises a question, okay? It's one that is well within our financial parameters to deal with. That I can assure you. This is not that we're going to have to rip down the building or anything else. This is a matter of having to change the swing on the bathroom doors. That's actually the biggest issue. Do you have bathroom doors swing out in every one of your apartments, or do you have them so they're adaptable, so that if somebody with a handicap rents the apartment, you change it.
Gary, I know that Marty and you have proposed certain language for the
Right.
for the disclosure statement, relating to this. I think, could you? Let's just hypothetically consider worst case outcome for Durst and what its impact would be, either on the economics of the project or the timing in
That's
terms
why
of.
I'm saying, we can retrofit. All of the biggest issue I'm saying to you is bathroom, the New York City Code recognizes adaptability. That you could take a door that swings in and you could switch the hinge and have it swing out, okay? The federal code does not. So that would mean the bathroom doors would have to swing out. Now, all of them are set to be rehinged. Okay? So I have 500 bathroom doors. Okay? I mean, that's what I have to do. This is not an economic that's going to cause a problem to the project. We're confident enough that we decided that we wanted to build in accordance with this 1968 code. So understand, we could have built to swing out. This was not like it was an impossibility. This was not such a tremendous burden. It was just our belief that it didn't make any sense. Okay.
So there's nothing about door width or turning radius for wheelchairs or
Well,
anything of that nature?
once it swings out, it's not a turning radius. So we have, one of the things we did do is the kitchens are open kitchens so that there's no problem, largely open kitchens, so that our view of what needs to be done economically is not any issue for the size of this project. And so you'll understand, as I say, we have a credit entity which has guaranteed a compliant building completion to the banks. So if the federal government says this doesn't comply, we have a credit entity that has to put up the money.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Why don't we,
Oh,
why don't we vote before?
no, it's you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very
Why don't
much.
you get a vote before we lose next one?
Okay, sure. So if there's no more questions, we'll move ahead with the vote on this. Let's see. Now before the committee and board are resolutions to be adopted that were transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the committee, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the HFA board, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Thank you.
Yes. And we, we need Nestor. Okay, Nestor, would you be able to, can you say 5 minutes?
If we can do it quickly.
Yes. So Bill,
The short version.
We're
We'll
gonna
do the
skip
short
around.
version.
We're gonna go to 22
Okay,
because
that's good.
Steve has to recuse himself from that item.
Gotta go.
Sorry.
That's okay.
22 is Brighton Towers, right?
Yep.
Presentation after me.
Okay,
If you
so Brighton Towers is coming back to you. I think it was previously approved in July. I believe. The reason that we needed to return is to allow for an increase in the amount of fixed rate bonds to 22.5 million. There's some reasons for this. I think we spoke at the last board meeting, maybe it was the one before that, about the impact of the Davis-Bacon regulatory change from HUD, and it impacted this project a bit more than we had anticipated, up to 16% of the project's rehab costs. There was also a change in the tax agreement with the city of Syracuse, which is looking to do a shelter rent-based agreement of 4%, as opposed to what was previously presumed to continue the tax incentive status of the property. And there was an increase in the project's acquisition cost based on evidenced by a new appraisal of 37%. Again, it's another 236 project. It's 596 units of housing in Syracuse.
And we're returning to the board because the increase in the mortgage amount is in excess of the amount allowed to us to increase on our own. Do we need Nestor? We're okay?
No, we're okay.
Oh, okay.
Just
I was just,
confirm we're okay, sorry.
all right.
Mary Hall.
Okay. Any more questions? Or
It's
any?
just an increase in the,
Mortgage amount.
yes,
Thank you.
we've already looked at this.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, now before the committee and board are resolutions to be adopted that were transmitted in connection with this item. I note that Mr. Weiss is recusing himself from this. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the committee, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the HFA board, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. And so now we'll go back to item
19.
20.
All right, this is a resolution authorizing financing approval in the amount not to exceed $33 million for LaPorte Apartments in Gramiton Avenue in Mount Vernon. We discussed this morning at the MIC, so why don't we, yeah.
Okay. Again, this has a pretty interesting community development context. It's part of the city of Mount Vernon, I'm certain. Downtown redevelopment plan. They're trying to develop a new commercial and residential uses along the Gramiton Avenue corridor. And the city has done a number of public improvements, including renovations to the adjacent park, as well as a fountain and traffic circle that is the entrance, serves as the entrance of the downtown area. So this project, LaPorte, is the new construction of 159 units of affordable housing to be located on Gramiton Avenue in Mount Vernon. All the units will be affordable to households earning under 60% of the community income, and the total development cost is expected to be about $57.7 million. The project being undertaken by Atlantic Development, which is controlled by Peter Fine, and he has a partnership with Ken Knuckles. M&T is providing the letter of credit. Sunny May is doing the insurance on the project during the permanent period, and M&T is also buying tax credits. We're seeking authorization for an amount up to $33 million of fixed-rate tax-exempt bonds, $2.3 million allocation of low-income housing tax credits, a $3.7 million HFA subsidy loan, and the project will also be seeking $2 million in homes for working families through the HTSC board. Again, this is another project with substantial local support. The city of Vernon is providing $1.5 million of home funds, as well as $1.65 million of community development block grant funding that's going towards some of the public improvements adjacent to the site and for offset some of the parking costs of construction of the parking structure that's part of the building. Again, so the project, a little bit more detail, is a 14-story building. It's going to consist of 159 units, 20 studios, 99 one-bedrooms, and 39 two-bedrooms. It's a total square footage of 268,000. There's a lot of amenities that will be provided in this building, including fitness center, media room, resident lounge, and open landscape roof deck. This is a mixed-use project. There'll be 20,000 square feet of retail space. The project's somewhat complex in terms of its structure. There are 3 condos in the property. One is the commercial space, which is being separately financed by the developer. One is the residential units, and the other is the garage. This property is currently a municipal garage, and as part of the rezoning, it was required to replace the number of spots that currently exist on the site. But there's also an agreement that the developer will be renovating the garage that's just 1 block away. In exchange for that renovation, tenants of this property will be allowed to park at that garage at no cost. But the bonds for the project are only being used to reimburse costs associated with the residential condo and the residential units. The City of Mount Vernon will eventually own again the condo that is the parking garage that's within the municipal lot within this building. So we did quite a bit of work trying to figure that out and make sure that it's acceptable to bond councils as well as consistent with federal tax requirements. Do you have any questions?
No, it's a good project. Anything? No.
Okay, now before the committee and board are resolutions to be adopted that were transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the committee, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the HFA board, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I think I'm done.
You're done.
Yeah.
You're done.
Item 21
You're
is a
on your-
resolution authorizing $260 million in unrated private placement financing for 160 West 62nd Street in Manhattan, New York County. Marion?
We're before the board asking its approval to amend and restate the bond resolution for this existing project financing, which was originally issued in 2011. This is much like what we see in other projects as they're moving from their construction phase to their permanent phase. We sometimes have to go in and tinker with the plumbing of the bond resolution. In this case, we're gonna add in a provision to allow for a unrated private placement for daily mode, and to put in an optional tender mechanism that we're now including in all new deals. It's the intention for this project, once the bond resolution is amended, to be purchased by Wells Fargo on a private placement for a period of up to 15 years, with the ability to tender the bonds at the end of 10 years. Much like a financing that was approved at the last board meeting for another project for Glenwood, which is the owner of this development. Wells intends to deposit the bonds in a custodial account, into which will also be deposited a Freddie Mac credit enhancement facility, and Wells then intends to be the owner of Freddie Mac guaranteed custodial receipts. Spent a lot of time on the last deal, sort of getting it to the point where the agency was comfortable with what was gonna happen with our bonds in the secondary market, and this is the second of probably several more to come of this structure.
Okay. Good. Fine.
Thank you.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I just had a question. Under this agreement, Wells has the right to decrease or eliminate payments to the PRF.
Yes, that's.
Could you just explain what the implications or the effects of that is on bond payments or on risk to the agency? Does it have any effect?
I'm not concerned in these buildings about that causing any additional risk to the agency. The PRF funds are basically mirror and amortization of the mortgage loan. These developments generally, generate significant cash flow and can pay their debts, and to the extent that the mortgage loan is not necessarily decreased, I'm personally not troubled by it.
Okay, so in this particular instance, then it's not material, or it's not relevant.
I don't see it as material, and they do need to come back to the agency. If we were to have concerns at that point, we would have a vote.
Okay, so if if the structure is done again, that would be reviewed on a case-by-case basis?
Yes, and if I might just take a second to put this in some historic context. It had been typical in transactions, I'm gonna say probably before the crash, for there to be an extended period of interest only on these developments. What we allowed for was up to 10 years of interest only, and then amortization at a 12% constant. And so what we're seeing lenders require now is something much more conservative, where the amortization is happening sooner and it's happening at a much lower constant, which would drive higher levels of amortization. So I do take comfort in that, and I take comfort in the fact that we have a role at the table should they desire to make any changes to this in the future.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so now before the committee and board are resolutions to be adopted that were transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the committee, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the HFA board, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution's adopted.
We now move to item 23, since we already did 22. The resolution approving multifamily volume cap recycling facility with Citibank. Marion, could you give us a little background?
Since 2008, when the Housing and Economic Recovery Act passed, the agency has the ability, which it didn't have before, to recycle prepayments of multifamily loans. And we've used that to stretch the state's limited resources of volume cap. What we've been doing is lining up the prepayment of an affordable deal with the new bond issue for an 80-20 deal, and getting those two events to happen on the same day is sometimes possible and sometimes not possible. So we found ourselves in situations where we have prepayments that we have not been able to capture. So for several years, we've been exploring what we can do. This has been a question in the RFPs we've sent out to investment bankers. What is it that we can do to capture that bond cap authority and to keep it alive for use in projects when projects are ready? And to do it in a way that it doesn't harm the prepaying affordable project by asking them to wait a little longer and to continue to carry their debt, or to hurry up an 80-20 project that may or may not be ready. So we have lost cap over the last several years, and what we're trying to do is to put in place a facility which would stop that from happening in the future. So we surveyed a broad array of lending institutions. Gloria Boyd took the lead on this for the agency. And really narrowed it down to a facility that we've been working on with Citibank that gives us a great deal of flexibility. We can access the facility on 1 day's notice when we have a prepaying project coming in, and we can also get the bonds out in a hurry into a project when we have a new project ready. The format of the structure is a direct placement with Citibank. Again, on an unrated basis. We have the ability under the facility to access up to $200 million of, I want to call it capacity. $200 million is roughly about 2 years of what the agency sees in prepayments from projects. And the facility also limits us to there being $50 million outstanding on any one occasion. So as projects prepay, we're going to access the facility, park the cap there, and access it as projects come up for financing. We're pretty excited about it. It's taken some doing to get there. I think it will end up being a very low cost financing facility to us, which was one of our concerns. The requirements of the facility are a couple that I want to share with the board. One, for tax reasons, we can only hold on to the prepayments for a maximum of 6 months. So we've built in a notice provision that, will start the clock ticking as we get close to that date. We also have to make sure that we can use this cap in subsequent transactions. We have to TEFRA the transactions that we might use the cap for ahead of accepting a prepayment for a project. So we're working with the folks in the legal group that are responsible for the TEFRA process to make sure that we have this all aligned. And it's our expectation that once this is approved by the board, approved by PACB, that we might be in a position to access it as early as the last week of October. We've spent a considerable amount of time with the folks at DOB, walking them through this, and the Governor's Council office, getting everybody comfortable with what has to happen, TEFRA process, and how this facility is going to function for the agency. So we're always looking for ways to stretch cap, and this is the latest iteration.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
Is this something you would see working with other lenders on at some point, or is it just Citi at this point?
I think I'd be well open to working with others. This was the most flexible and the lowest cost financing mechanism that we could identify. But we're always open, subject to the MA rules, to talking to people about ways of doing things.
Thinking about the MA rules. I had a question.
Sure.
So the interest rate that we would be paying in effect is the tax exempt rate plus a
Spread.
A spread, right?
Mhm.
Okay, and I note that in your write-up here, you do say that currently our investment earnings will offset the interest expense, which these days is exceptionally low. But it is conceivable, of course, that that situation would change.
Yeah, so it's our intention to build in a framework for making those decisions.
Right.
And if we find that situation changes as time goes on, we will then make the decision about whether or not we want to access the facility, whether we think that that's a good investment of agency money. The spread is, it's basically, it's going to end up being basis points. We end up seeing it being something that's going to be costly. We always have the option, to either hurry up a project, to take the prepayment, or not to access it. That's exactly how we intend to manage this.
Okay, and will there be reporting to the board about the usage of this agreement and how much it's been used, what the costs are, et cetera,
Yes,
associated, et cetera? What
Will
the
it be
savings
okay
are?
on a quarterly basis?
Quarterly basis is fine, yeah.
Right, okay, will do.
Thank you.
Good to go.
Thank you.
Now before the board is a resolution authorizing and approving the entering into a loan agreement and a deposit account control agreement and executing a promissory note. Assuming the first and second previously entered for HFA, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motions are carried and the resolution adopted.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, and thanks to Alex for his legal advice on the facility. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Alex, as always. We now move to the AHC consent item. A resolution authorizing the award of grant funds for certain projects located inside and outside the city of New York. This is a consent item. There's no discussion unless board members so request. Hearing none.
Actually, just, I did have a number of questions. Marion, could you just walk us through the two reports that are included here? The
AHC, I'm going to defer to Dominic.
AHC?
Yeah, the AH Ownership Development Program Experience Report and the list of the projects located in New York, located outside and within New York City. The question actually about the first report is, it tells us the amounts awarded, et cetera, et cetera. What it doesn't give us is the number of projects this represents, and how many of these have been completed, how many are in construction, where they are.
That is correct. The purpose of, I assume you're referring to the county cumulative report.
Right.
The sole purpose of this report is just to identify to the board that we haven't spent more than 50% of the funds in any one municipality. That's part of the statute of AHC. So this is not to delineate or list every single project. It's just to show the percentage of dollars that we're allocating to every municipality. So this is every county, and we treat New York City and the 5 boroughs as one municipality. So that's what this particular report is used for, solely that.
Okay, so this isn't in any way a tracking report, really? It's just-
No, it's just for informational purposes to show you that historically, we have not spent more than 50% of any of the allocations, either yearly or cumulatively in
Okay.
any one particular
And
municipality.
actually, the other question I had, it was on the status of funds report.
Yes.
Could you just run through what some of these categories are, because they're not self-evident?
Okay.
For example, in the current FY 13-14 funds for non-New York City projects, we see a beginning balance and a current balance and awards expected, and frankly, these numbers don't seem to work together.
Yeah, what it is again, we're allocated 25 million per annum.
Right.
And by statute, we cannot award more than 50% to any one municipality. So what this is breaking up is that 25 million. We say
Right,
25.
12 and a half and 12 and a half.
12 and a half and 12 and a half. And this is sort of like a checking account. The money comes in, and it doesn't always get spent as soon as it comes in. So New York City projects, we haven't had, we've been undersubscribed, so to speak, in previous years. So we haven't finished all the previous year's funding. So we're funding projects from previous and current years.
Right, okay, I was gonna come to that in a second. But under the non-New York City projects, the beginning balance is the 12.5 million. But it says the current balance is only 680,000.
The beginning balance was the allocation, and then
Right.
the current balance is currently. I guess we could make it clearer if you want to maybe change beginning balance to beginning allocation.
Beginning allocation, that's, that's fine. My real question is about the current balance and what the difference is, what the delta is there, what changed, or does that mean that money has already been allocated, or?
Yes, right now. And what I did is you can see on reallocation of funds, since we have viable projects still outside of New York City, I've reallocated 1.4 million approximately from New York City to non-New York City projects.
Right, that part I understood.
So currently, as of right now, assuming everything gets approved today, we'll have no more funds available for projects outside of New York City, but we have 17.881 available for New York City projects, and if we choose to do so, reallocate some of those funds to non-New York City projects.
Right, but I just want to come back to that first section, though, which is the difference between the allocation and the current balance. So, does that mean that the rest of that 12.5 million has already been allocated?
On the non-New York City projects, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, in the future, could you make that clearer in the report?
Sure.
Because it's not clear how the numbers all fit together.
Okay, we'll work to, if you have a suggestion, I'll give you.
I
we'll
would
see if
just
we
say
can-
allocated to date or something.
Okay. Right. Definitely work on it and have it,
Okay, and then the question is on the previous year's funds, what was the reason for the reallocation? Is that just because the funds were available and
yeah, we have viable
in one and needed in the other, or?
Exactly.
Okay.
We can never spend more than 50% in any one municipality.
Right.
But it doesn't mean we have to spend 50% in New York City. If we don't have viable projects, we have and in the past, and we'll continue to allocate that money throughout the state as needed.
Okay.
And what we also do is when projects are recaptured, projects that were awarded years ago, if they're ever recaptured, you'll see additional funds recaptured onto recaptured funds. We automatically put that back in.
When you, that was the other, actually another question. Recaptured funds are projects that for some reason didn't occur and so,
Or didn't, it's a cumulative number here, so it could be one particular project that we recaptured the whole thing for whatever reason, or it could be multiple projects that had breakage. You know, we made a $300,000 award for a home improvement, and they spent $297,000. So they couldn't find a home to do $3,000. We recapture it, it goes back into the pool. That's why you have all these odd type numbers. $680,095.22. Because there's always breakage, and we're trying to be
right,
as
no,
efficient
I
as possible.
understand that. It might be helpful though if you had a footnote there explaining what recaptured funds consist of.
We have supporting documents that I can make available for information to where those numbers come from.
That would be very helpful. In the future, when we're given these reports, if we could have that, that would be, Okay, so then, under previous FY 12-13 funds, the remaining balance, those are funds that are not yet allocated?
Yes.
Okay. And so the total available for awards, I said rewards, consists of the 12.5 million and then the remaining balance?
It's the 5.3, the 12.5, and there's no recapture, so it's the 17,881 that's available.
Right, okay. I just wanted to make it clear how that was arrived at.
Just for your information, the recapture number of 321,075 is coming from 4 different projects in total. On the right-hand side, on the non-New York City projects, we had a recapture of 75,000 from Cuba Development Corporation. They were unable to complete their project. Another 150 from Cuba, another project that we recaptured the funds from. A $400 recapture from Long Island Housing Partnership, and a $90,000 recapture from the city of Binghamton. Again, they were unable to do two additional homes. We all felt it was in best interest to recapture that money and reallocate it to someplace else.
Okay, in the backup documents that you referred to, with that information being...
Yeah, it's a report here. I'll figure a way to clean this up so that it does. This report has a lot of information. I could just make it as part of the board package or with the status of funds report.
I think make it part of the board package would be very helpful. Okay, because then a lot of this becomes clear.
Okay, not a problem. Any other questions?
Actually, I had another question, which was simply about the projects themselves. These projects were selected in pursuant to a NOFA, is that correct? The projects for awards?
We got applications in.
There was a NOFA, there were applications?
Yes, in January
right.
2014, applications came in a review process, and they were selected after going through the whole litany due diligence.
Right, a whole number of different procedures and evaluations.
Right. Construction environmental review, LexNex review, we have an internal credit committee.
Right.
That staff makes recommendations to, and they're representing the board to make sure that my staff and I are doing all the proper due diligence.
And what was the total number of applicants originally, do you know?
I think it was about 115 applications.
Yeah.
Total. I think they requested in excess of 45 million. Off the top of my head, it's just...
Yeah, no, I was just curious about what how many applicants there were to select from to begin with.
Yeah, there's 115.
And how much leeway that gives you in terms of the selection process itself, the evaluation process.
There's a lot of groups that are not getting funded because either their inability to proceed or their inability to show the ability to proceed based on past performances that haven't gotten funded.
Okay, for the outside New York City projects, I think it would be helpful if We knew on a geographic basis what the number of applications were and the number that were finally selected for award were. Because I assume that the applications are not evenly distributed across the state, or proportionate
I can
according
give you a
to-
report of applications received. That could give you a pipeline report. What we do at AHC 8, the applications aren't scored, so it's a moving target. Applications, we still have the ability to take in applications. New York City has an open enrollment. New York City has an open window to submit applications because of the city's fiscal year, and timing is different than AHC's.
Right.
We also have a caveat in the NOFA saying that for whatever reason, at our discretion, we can accept applications. There's a group in Huntington that.
Oh, yes. For Matin.
Right.
Is that what you're talking about?
The Tincut Court, that there's a federal lawsuit, and they weren't ready, and they may be ready in the next month or so to submit an application. So we have that ability to take that application in, and assuming it meets all the other requirements, it may move to the front of the line.
Okay, and in the write-up, the one thing I was looking for was just a statement that all of these projects are being, maybe I missed it someplace, that all of these no, I take it back, transmitted and recommended for your approval is the resolution, et cetera, et cetera. So the staff has recommended that all of these projects be funded as indicated in the project description and in the charts. Is that correct?
You say that's what I'm saying. Is
Yeah.
it not in there?
There is a recommendation, but it's, actually, the recommendation is just a
On each
resolution delegating the authority to make the awards. What I'm asking for is a statement of recommendation from staff regarding
It's
the
on each
projects
individual.
themselves.
It's on each individual executive summary. On the recommendation is that staff has reviewed them, the proposal, and believes the project will meet the agency's purpose and promote home improvement.
I'm sorry,
On
where
each
is,
individual,
oh, because I'm looking at the individual projects.
are you looking at
here.
the chart or the executive summaries
I
that?
think that we can work to amend the board memo.
We can put it in the
add-
Resolution?
Yeah.
And not on the specific, okay.
So you're making the recommendation, right?
Okay.
Yeah, just that, so it's clear that staff has recommended these projects, because otherwise we're just
Yes.
blindly,
Yeah, I think it's in there,
It's there, and
but
we'll
it's
make
not
it clearer.
clear, yeah,
Successfully buried.
thank you, okay. Okay, other than that, I don't have any more immediate questions.
Okay, we'll make those changes.
Thank you. See, somebody does read the reports.
That's good.
Okay, now before the board is a resolution of the New York State Affordable Housing Corporation authorizing awards of grant funds for certain projects located outside and inside the city of New York. Assuming the first and second previously entered for AHC, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried.
Thank you.
And I think that's it for the agenda items. There being no further items for the HFA Finance and Program Committee, can we have a motion and a second to adjourn the Finance and Program Committee meeting?
Second.
And there being no further items for HFA and AHC boards, can we have a motion and second to adjourn the meetings?
Second.
Assuming the first and second previously entered for the Finance and Program Committee, all in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motions are carried and the meeting adjourned. And assuming the first and second previously entered for the HFA and AHC boards, all in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motions are carried and the meetings are adjourned. And our next board meeting is Thursday, October 9 at 8:30 a.m. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Albany.
Thank you, Albany.